You're good to go.
Thank you. Okay, welcome everyone. We'll call this council meeting of February 10th to order. We'd like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded lands of the Mi'kmaq. And a record of attendance, Lindsay, you have that. There's no absent with regrets. We're all at the table. Any declarations of conflict of interest, anyone? And again, as you know, you can declare at the time of the agenda item. Okay, approval of agenda, additions and deletions. Who has any? I have some additions, but anybody else have additions? Deletions? Okay, I was just going to add a garden party. That's a request from Lieutenant Governor's office, and a letter of support for the Southwest Biosphere. Anything else? Okay, a motion to approve the agenda with the additions, please. Councillor Lesser, seconded by Councillor Bell. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. Approval of minutes, Town Council, January 13th, please. Councillor Cleveland, second by Councillor Lesser. Any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. And approval of minutes for Committee of the Whole, January 27th. Both Councillor Hatfields, Councillor Heather and Councillor Bell. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, no public hearing. All right, business arising, National Curling Championships. Councillor Cleveland, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship. And this is an exciting one. It is for me because of the potential of this. This is a request coming from YASTA, the Yarmouth and Acadian Shores Tourism Association. And what it is an event which would happen in December of all times, when Christmas shopping is at its peak and Yarmouth perhaps is at its most beautiful, from the 5th to the 10th, 2022. It is the Canadian Seniors Curling Championship. There is an attached letter which kind of explains the nature of it. There's a lot of potential. 130 athletes, 15 officials plus friends. There'd be huge economic impact. Hotel rooms booked by Curling Canada could equal 550 plus room nights. This is really big in a shoulder season that you just normally don't get that. And the request is for each of the YASTA partners, that would be the three municipalities plus MPLAC, would be for $10,000. And so I'd like to make a motion that we support that and give the $10,000 as part of that.
Thank you. Councillor Dares?
Yes, I'd like to second that motion and just follow up with a little bit more information, only in regards to the way that this event was offered to Yarmouth. And typically these are a bid proposal that it's a sort of an ominous task to fill them out. And this time I think Yarmouth was contacted, YASTA was contacted and said, it's yours if you want it, which is speaks volumes as to the confidence that the Canadian Curling Association has in this community. So, second the motion. Thank you.
Not usually muted. So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion, questions, anything? Okay, I did call Neil just to get some more details on the budget. Everything looks great, so I'm glad to support this one. Councillor Bell?
I'm thrilled. I think it's just amazing to be thinking about filling the community up during the shoulder season, and it's such a wonderful time of year for Yarmouth in terms of the lighting and all of the the things downtown. The question I have, of course, is about budget. So would this be in our 2022-2023 budget? And this does not come out of our grants to organizations. We would find another place. Yeah, perfect. Just wanted to know. Thank you.
So to that point, Jeff, are we referring this to budget? Are we supporting it and then it goes in the budget?
Your Worship, I think because of the timing of the request and the timing of when we expect to have a budget before you, I think that you can go ahead and make the commitment. If you'll recall, and probably others who've been around a while, pre-COVID, we used to have a line item in our budget for special events, and that was for exactly this sort of request. And that has not been in our budget the last year or so. Now, obviously, if you make this motion, that will become a priority item, and it won't be up for debate when it comes to budget time if you approve it ahead of time.
Okay. Good. Okay, so the motion to approve it as it is on the table. Ready for the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. Through the system here. Okay, Fishing Gear Coalition. So there's no attachment there, but we did have a presentation at the Committee of the Whole. And I do believe the question is, are we going to support it? Is it going to be financial? Where are we? Go ahead, CAL.
So, Your Worship, the request from the presenter was twofold. One, they were looking for a lead municipality for this initiative, and understand it is a province-wide initiative. They're looking for a lead municipality, and they were looking for $35,000 total in municipal contribution. I do know that through just being included on some emails that they are starting to get some commitments, actually from the other end of the province. So the initiative truly will be province-wide. As far as the two questions that were asked, I don't know that we ought to be the lead municipality on this. I think there are other municipalities that are much more present, I guess, in the fishing industry. I mean, we obviously have a high-profile waterfront, but we don't have that many fishermen who make their home in the town of Yarmouth relative to some other municipalities, and maybe one of them would be a better, more appropriate lead. As far as the financial contribution goes, I don't know if anyone's had any conversation with the waste park and whether or not the waste park would take this on behalf of the 3 municipal units of Yarmouth County. I don't know if the other municipal units have considered it and or made a contribution towards this. So I bring questions, not answers. But it just occurred to me that might be worth exploring before committing.
Thank you. No, that's a really great point, which would get us sending in a donation or whatever it is from the region as opposed to just us. Go ahead, Councillor Bell.
So I'd like to make a motion that the town support in principle the Fishing Gear Coalition study into recycling end-of-life lobster traps with an up to $5,000 contribution, and recognize with the understanding that either the Yarmouth Waste Park or another municipal unit with a more direct interest in the fishing industry will be the lead on the study.
Okay. So does that take into consideration what Jeff mentioned about the waste park?
Yeah, I think so, because it's an up to $5,000 contribution. And we're recognizing that another municipal unit or the waste park will be the lead for the study group, because I don't know whether under the rules they can have a non-municipal entity as the lead, but if they could, that would be my preference, and it's been my preference from the beginning that it's the Yarmouth Waste Park that is the logical place for this to reside, because they have the lobster traps. But I'm just not sure.
Oops,
whether
everybody
this-
froze up for there.
Yeah, so I think I'd like to word the motion in such a way that it gives the study group the flexibility to make it work within the parameters of the study.
Okay, so I just have some questions because I'm not quite understanding it. So are you suggesting that the town put $5,000 on the table?
Up to $5,000 contribution. I mean, I think they're asking for, I think there's 10 municipal units, if I counted right, that have been approached. And so if I divide 35,000 by 10, that's $3,500. So that's why I said up to a $5,000 contribution. I don't want to make any greater contribution. And I'm assuming that that could go through the Yarmouth Waste Park.
Go ahead, Jeff, because I'm just thinking logistics.
Yeah, so
I hear you.
So the waste park can make, so my comments were of the mind that maybe the waste park would actually make the financial contribution, and that they would, on behalf of the three, because three councils are represented there, perhaps be the body that makes the contribution on behalf of all of us. And maybe 5,000 is the appropriate number. Not knowing where the others are on this,
Yeah,
I would like to say refer it to the waste park, and with our support in principle,
okay.
and ask them to consider a contribution up to $5,000. And I don't know, Gil, I know you're on the waste park. I don't know who else is, but do they have a meeting scheduled in the near future?
We just had one just this past week, actually, Jeff, and it was this issue was brought to the table. And
Okay.
I think, Gil, you can correct me, but I think we kind of left it that they would ask Sonia to come and make a presentation to the waste park at a future meeting, and then go from there. Is that correct, Gil?
No, actually, I believe that was a waste check meeting where that
Yes.
was discussed, not the solid waste park meeting.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just looking at I have
Okay.
to just bounce over my calendar. Certainly prepared to bring this to the just trying to find out when the next meeting is. I keep losing my calendar, sorry. I don't have
Perhaps-
that in front of me, guys.
Okay, so perhaps if we refer it to the waste park, maybe our members could request a special meeting to consider it.
Yes, I can tell you this, that Glendon Ring, the manager, has had multiple discussions with Miss Smith, and that a lot of the product that she's already picked up, I think 10 tons of traps from the waste park. It appears as though this is a win-win situation.
Mhm.
And there's the admission, actually there was an admission by a counselor who was a former fisherman that this is a lot better than what they used to do, which is cut the ropes and let them sink. So it's at least recovering the traps. And although that was clarified by the fact that they did remove the heads before they did that. But, we still don't want that debris on the bottom of the ocean. And I think there's also consideration in the future for having an environmental fee at the front end, much like your electronics or tires.
Right.
So there's a surcharge at the purchase of a new trap, and that surcharge would cover the drop off. At the present time, fishermen pay $10 a trap to drop their traps at the $10 a trap or $10 a ton, one or the other, but the ballasts are removed and they're stockpiled. I think the coalition has already removed something like 100,000 traps from the system, and that's from Canso on down. So it sounds like it's a very worthwhile cause, and I believe that we did request that there be a presentation to WasteCheck, but I believe that this is probably something that we should be investing in because, we're living in an area that has 38% of the commercial fishery in Canada. It's the mainstay of our area, and and certainly it's a very small investment to protect the environment. So,
Yeah, I think we all think it's a good thing. Go ahead, Val, because you made the motion. It wasn't seconded, so you're free to change.
I withdraw the motion because there was no seconder. And can I move instead that the town approve in principle the study and refer funding considerations to the Yarmouth Solid Waste Park?
I'll second that.
Yeah, okay.
That's good. Okay. Moved and seconded. Any more discussion on that one? Concerns, questions?
There is a meeting coming up on March the 2nd. I just found it in my book. So it'll be a couple more weeks and we'll be able to look at that.
That's not too far away. Thanks, Councillor. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you, folks. Gear. Okay, so new business procurement policy. So the recommended motion there is that council approve the amendments to the procurement policy as recommended by staff. Okay, go ahead, CAO.
So, Your Worship, this is again part of our ongoing process of reviewing policies and bylaws, and there are some amendments in the procurement policy that that are clearly indicated, and I hope you've had a chance to look at. I'll just quickly run through them. One of them is that we're proposing to increase the thresholds or buying authority of certain staff members. Previously, the thresholds were fairly low for some of our supervisors. We've increased that and increased the amounts for managers as well. But where we haven't changed the limit is the amount at which a purchase needs to come to council for approval. So that's at 25,000 and above. And so that remains unchanged. Advertising tenders, our practice has been of late, particularly because our tenders tend to be large construction and large purchases of machinery. We advertise on the provincial procurement website, and that is where most businesses find that are interested in bidding find the information. We do make local businesses, of course, aware that we are putting out big tenders if we know they are in the business of selling trucks or machinery or doing construction. We also will be advertising on our website, and we do that now. But what we are not going to continue to do is run advertisements in a local newspaper. And the reason for that is because it really isn't where the market is for the things that we're looking for. We do advertise a lot of things in the local paper, but this one doesn't yield necessarily the return that it should, or that it should for the money, if you know what I mean. Get some notes here. So if we have a tie in bids, the current policy says we put the names in a box and we pull one out, and we're replacing that with giving ourselves the right to go back and ask for further bids, to keep it less of a luck of the draw and more based on a value for money that we can get for the town and taxpayer. The tender security section has been updated truly to reflect what actually should be happening, and of course the policy is a number of years old, and this is more in line with what we ought to be doing in terms of returning tender security. Some services that the town procures, such as audit, legal, our banking, our insurance, these are things that you don't want to go out to tender for every year or even every 2 or 3 years. So what we're saying in the policy in the proposed amendment is that it'd be a minimum of 10 years. And that simply allows council to continue with a service provider for longer than 10 years. But we won't go out less than 10 years because, frankly, those services are not easy to spec, and they take a lot of work to put in place, and that some of it relies on knowing the business and developing the relationship, and they're not things that it's in the town's best interest to spend our time on a year after year or even every 2 or 3 years going out to tender. So that's the recommendation there. And 15.2, there's some procedural amendments there related to receiving goods. So essentially those are the changes. This has been reviewed by the Director of Finance and his staff, and those are the recommended amendments, Your Worship. You're muted.
Jeff, just one question. I have no problem with the changes, but there was a fairly significant change in the increase of being able to spend without having, permission, I guess. And so can you just kind of explain how that amount came up? Because it's almost like, up to $7,500 difference.
Okay, so let me just open that piece up right here.
I think originally it was 1,000 to 2,500, and now it's like 5,000 to 10,000.
Okay, let me just swing down to that section. So depending on your level in the organization, you can authorize different amounts. But so an informal purchasing process, so that's calling around, that's getting faxes or what have you. Less than 2,500. In one case, formal price comparisons are not required. Then 25 to 10,000. There's a slightly more formal. Where we do go to the full formal tender has not changed. In terms of why we changed and why we picked these amounts, finance department looked at the people in the organization and the amounts that, the things that they kind of have control over. And these amounts seem to align with the responsibility and their sort of regular purchasing habits. And what happens if these are out of line is that, let us say, a street supervisor or a transportation supervisor has to continually go to the manager to get his approval to do the purchase. Well, the manager has control over the budget and so on anyway. And if the responsibility is with a supervisor or manager, we certainly have this level of trust in them. And so we think it's just appropriate that the purchasing amount fit, I guess, the regular responsibilities of the person at that level in the organization.
Okay,
if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I have no problem with it. I just was just wondering how those amounts arise.
Yeah, I think it's got more to do with the job than say any necessary standard that's out there. I think it's just from feel and experience with the policy.
That's a great question, Heather, because I was thinking it was upped based on the fact that we wanted people to be able to fill their gas tanks without having to get permission this week. Oh my goodness, they're going up 4 cents again. Okay, so did somebody make that motion? Councillor Hatfield, Bell, and seconded by Councillor Lesser. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, taxi rate comparison. So you can take that, CAO, if you want. I know the recommendation is there.
The recommendation is there. The Director of Planning and Development did that report, and she is with us at the meeting if she wanted to speak to that.
Natalie, did you want to speak to the taxi one?
Sure, Your Worship. I apologize if my internet freezes tonight. Good evening. So I as per direction from Council, I did an investigation of taxi rates within other municipalities and came to some conclusions. So the towns or communities that have taxi services where rates are established or approved by Council that I reviewed was Bridgewater, Digby, Truro, and Antigonish. Although I must mention Truro does not do a fixed rate, so we'll take them out of the discussion. But in general, my summary is that the town's taxi rate, fixed taxi rate for day service and night service is in line with those of Bridgewater, Digby, and Antigonish, who their rates were set at the latest Bridgewater in 2020 and the others in 2018. Where I saw some opportunity or differentiation is that in Bridgewater and Truro, they've established an incremental rate. So they have a base rate for one passenger, and then they'd have an incremental rate per passenger. So I saw that as an opportunity. And also, I think Yes, it was the base rate, and then passengers under 12 years of age weren't charged if they were with another passenger. So I guess my recommendation is not to change the base rate that we have, but for council to consider to add an additional rate for each passenger that's 12 years of age and older in increments of 50 cents per passenger that is legally allowed in that vehicle. So that means the vehicle should have a seatbelt per passenger, and that would be the allowable capacity of passengers that would be allowed during that ride.
Thank you.
Open to any questions.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Heather.
Natalie, thanks for that report. I read it, but actually I didn't see your recommendation onto just now. But that was where my thought went when I looked at that report, was that the extra passenger, and I was even willing to go $1 more per passenger. I'm just thinking of the increase in gas, if that continues for taxi services. And I'm just kind of wondering if it should be 50 cents or should it be $1 per person, because I think I just feel that that's probably the direction we should go, but that's my recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Dares.
Yeah, I guess my understanding is that this is not an automatic review, that this is something that municipalities would do at the request of the taxi owners.
Correct.
So we're looking at the rates that were presented, and I haven't got that report in front of me. I'm trying to bring it up on my iPad, but the rates that were represented by Bridgewater, Digby, and Antigonish, some of those are dated by 2 to 3 years.
Bridgewater was in 2020, and Digby and Antigonish were 2018. And we completed our last review in 2017.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, just to piggyback on what Councillor Hatfield has said, in the present environment with the rates being what they are, it sounds to me like there's not much of no one's going to get rich driving taxi. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, so on the table right now is the recommendation that we don't change, except just reading it here, 12 years of age or older, an additional passenger charge of 50 cents per passenger, and then we have $1 on the table. So, that's up to council to decide which way we want to go. There's two sides. We want to make sure that the taxis can survive for sure, but we don't want to overcharge people that their only means of transportation is taxi. Go ahead, Councillor Dares.
Yeah, I think I kind of like Councillor Hatfield's suggestion of raising it by $1. At least it sweetens the pot a little bit.
So, Natalie, inside. Yeah, so Bridgewater says $8 for one passenger, $8.50 for two, $9 for three, so 50 cents. Digby is $8 for 1 to 2 passengers, $1 each over 2. Antigonish is just the flat rate. So we're still in line with, we're still in line. So somebody can make a motion, and we'll see what happens with the motion.
I'll make that motion to increase the extra passenger rate, I guess, to $1.
While keeping the regular
base rate the same. And that would be for people over the age of 12, I think is what we were looking at.
Okay. All right. Do I have a second by Councillor Cleveland? Is there any more discussion on that one? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you, Natalie.
You're welcome, Your Worship.
Okay, next, schedule of fees policy amendment. And there's CAO if you want to take that.
Sure, Your Worship. What I'm going to do is I'm going to refer this one back over to Natalie as well. So this work was done or led by Natalie and her staff. So, Your Worship.
Go ahead, Natalie.
Get to see me twice. It's always a pleasure. So, I guess the what you see in the changes to the town fees policies, it's really a two-prong effort. One is in the previous, what we call the town fees policies, really just identified those fees that were related to planning and development. So it didn't provide all of the fees that would be considered town fees. If you were looking to be a resident or have a business, you'd have to go to different places on our website to find that information. So in reviewing other municipalities, what their best practices in this area, I sort of took an example of that to draft this one in collaboration with the CAO and the Director of Finance. So it is now a town fees policy that identifies all of the fees within the town. And what we've done is identify them in separate schedules. In the content of the fees policy, we've just put in some language with regards to the purpose, the scope, and some definitions so that people, it gives them some education around why we do what we do. And then you'll see the individual fees. So to comment, a lot of the fees did not change. Our recommendation is not drastic, where other communities have certainly increased their fees over the last couple of years to reflect actual cost. The town really is open for business and for business development, and these fees, as supported by the CAO and the Director of Finance, reflects that. One of significant change I want to point out is Schedule B, which is the building and development permit fees. We've changed how to do the calculation. So the building official always had a choice whether to calculate by square footage or by percentage, and he always chose the lowest. So my recommendation, or our recommendation, is to keep it really simple and for commercial development to go to 20 cents per square foot, for residential 10 cents per square foot, which is the same fee per square foot that we've had in the previous, or the current, I should say. But what we've done is we've added 3 other sections. One is accessory building, alterations or repairs, 2, accessory buildings and alteration and repairs, because those can't be measured in the similar formula. So this way, the building official has other tools in the tool basket to reflect the fees. Other than that, there are some other smaller changes. We've increased the fee by $50 for doing a site plan or a variance plan. The development officer may take between 2 hours to 2 days to support one of those plans, and we thought that it was reasonable to increase that since it hasn't been done for many years. Looking at a simple thing as a zoning confirmation, it's been $10 for 20 plus years, the CFO has told me, and so we've increased that to $25. I think that's reasonable given inflation in time. And then as you look to areas where we have the license bylaw, which is to identify fees for events such as circuses, indoor craft shows, etc. I took a look at those, and there were some things that were kind of a fee for photography that wasn't really something that people would come into town hall or that we can enforce or control. So I'm suggesting to remove that one. And then cleaning up the fee schedules to reflect what has been on the website to match now what is in the document. So there was some cleanup to match fees that council had approved previously that were on the website to now reflect it in this document. And really, the rest of the fees is really, I brought those forward from documents where, or bylaws or permits, applications, where they lie currently, and brought them into this one document. So you might see a lot of green. That's just to improve the language, to make it more concise. If anything was crossed off, then that just reflects that language has been deleted. So I hope there's clarity around it. And the hope of the document is that we can go back to some of those bylaws or permits, actually more of the bylaws, and remove the actual fee, and have it refer to this document, so that as we're reviewing this annually, we don't have to go back if there are any changes to all of these other bylaws. So we can make it a little bit easier for staff and for the public who's trying to find out what the right fee is. So with that, I hope that you'll accept our recommendation.
Sorry, I was muted. Councillor Lesser, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that council approve the amendments to the schedule of fees policy as recommended by staff. It was a great report, and thank you for your work on that.
Good. Second by the Deputy Mayor. Okay, any questions? I have one question. Why is some HST and some is exempt? Must be a rule there.
Yeah, there are rules, and if the director of finance were here, he could explain it probably, but
I'll
I can't.
ask him. I'll ask him another day. Thank you. Okay, any questions, concerns? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Good work. Good work. That. Okay. Schedule of fees, reports. Am I on the right one? Reports, council advisory, Deputy Mayor.
A recommended motion that council requests the police advisory board to investigate the feasibility of putting up cameras in select positions within the town.
I'll move, second by Councillor Heather Hatfield. Any discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Lesser.
I'm supporting the motion. I'm also thinking it might be worthwhile to look at partnering with some of the businesses in the downtown that, I mean, you can buy relatively cheap cameras that can be put inside and capture storefronts. And I know there's been damage in the past in front of some of the stores, and they might be interested in cost sharing. I don't know if that's an option or not, but that can come out a different motion at some other point. But I think it might be worthwhile to look at, some kind of a cost share with businesses on if they want to put them in their business facing the street, so we can also get the benefit of catching anybody who might be doing something they shouldn't be. But I'm supporting the motion.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Deputy?
Recommended motion that council directs staff to investigate how we can improve the service level for snow removal from accessible parking spaces, including consideration of the timing, equipment, and manpower required to meet a higher standard.
Okay. So moved. Second by Councillor Lesser. Any discussion? Go ahead, Deputy.
I tuned in the other night to the accessibility committee meeting, and I will say they're doing great work there, and this was brought up there as well. And I know Councillor Dares and Councillor Lesser are both members of that, and I think it was a great discussion around that about better practices and whatnot. And I know there has been discussion around this, and sometimes how things come to the table, we don't always like it, but that still doesn't mean that these aren't important things that we should look into. And I think that they give that a great discussion, and maybe something coming forward from there. I don't know if either one of you would like to speak to it, but it was a good discussion, and I think that committee's doing some great work as well.
Good. Anyone else?
just because he invited the opportunity. I don't have anything more to add. I think you summed it up really well. The accessibility committee would like some work done on this as well, but they value the work that's currently being done, and they appreciate the severity of some of the storms we've had and the work it takes to do it. And I think our staff are doing a phenomenal job, but there may be some opportunity to reach out to those that have accessibility issues to see where we may be able to improve. And some of those, I think, are particular to business owners that may need a reminder that they're responsible for cleaning an area in front of their business. Because I don't think it's always the town. It's also people pushing snow into those spots and maybe not thinking about it at the time.
Great. Councillor Dares?
Yes, certainly. I think the committee members recognize that when there is a complaint, it's usually born out of frustration, and I think their request was that we try to prioritize and look at those areas that require extra attention. But they also recognize that there's a responsibility on the members of the committee and on the general public to identify those things. And so we discussed the things like the SeeClick Fix app that's available, and don't. I got a call in the height of that snowstorm a couple of weeks ago, and the gentleman was complaining that the plow hadn't been up his street yet, and I just didn't know what to say. I was speechless because it was still a raging storm outside. But some people's expectations are fairly high. I think you'll find that the members of the accessibility committee are looking for ways to improve the service and not to complain about it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is how we receive some of the complaints as well. And I fully understand that it's born out of frustration, but attacking is not the answer. And
Your Worship, your explanation of the plowing schedule and what's required and the work involved, I've heard lots of really, really positive comments about the way that was communicated to the public. So good on you.
I think it's all about education and knowledge, right? Sometimes we just don't know. So I think staff's doing a great job. So the motion's on the floor. Is there anything else from anybody that you want to share? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Go ahead, Deputy.
I recommend a motion that council provide a letter of support to Meadowfield School for their playground replacement project.
Second by Councillor Heather Hatfield. Discussion. So Jeff, we're going to have a lot of money questions. So these come up and they're one-offs. Where does that come from? Like I think we have to figure out as a council, like where everything lands, like the one-offs, the events, the extra grant asks, all those, they come to us regularly and they're all worthy. I think we need to understand where they come from and how it works.
Okay, so Your Worship, the item up for discussion right now is just a letter of support, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so as far as the there is one on there. It may have been skipped, the Radiothon. There are other events or activities that happen throughout the year the council is asked to contribute to, and with full support does, right? These are worthy activities that are really important to our community. But in the case of Radiothon, they're not going to, apply for a grant. They're going to run their program of seeking donations, and then council has to make a decision. We would like to have enough in the community grants account that we would hold some money there for the balance of the year for these types of things. This isn't so much a grant request, but that's a convenient place to take it out of.
Yeah.
The thing is, I guess, is we need to be aware and through doing a little bit of looking back over the last couple or few years, we can identify these things that council, these decisions council is making to give money to this cause or that. We can kind of add it up and give you an estimate to put in your budget for 22, 23, because it does get a bit awkward when we feel like we knew this was coming. Why didn't we plan for it specifically? So let us do a little bit of work in preparation for the operating budget to deal with these. In the meantime, like I say, you have a Radiothon one on your budget. Deal with that. $1,000 as the motion or as the recommendation is not going to tip the balance. Although the director of finance does make the margin of error very, very narrow on the budget. I'm sure we can deal with that without a problem. So, but we will try to make a specific line or mechanism within the budget that these things are looked at, and we know what's coming next year, and it'll be an easier process for council.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dayers?
Sorry, Worship, I tried to get out in front of this. As a member of the School Advisory Council who are leading this initiative, I'll be abstaining from discussion or the vote.
Oh, good. Thank you. Lindsay will note that. Go ahead. Councillor Cleveland, were you going to, thought I saw your hand go up. No?
No, you had mentioned about putting money in, and I was going to point out that this motion is just a letter of support. That's all.
Yeah. And I it was top of mind, so I just asked about. Okay, so we're good. All right then. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. Go ahead, Deputy.
The recommended motion that the town of Yarmouth donate $1,000 to the 2022 Yarmouth Hospital Foundation's We Care Radiothon. Okay,
second by Councillor Cleveland. Are we going to note you?
Yeah, I have to remove myself from this, actually.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Dayers. You seconded. Okay. All right. Any discussion on this one? So, CAO, I was going to say about this one. It comes up every year, but are we going to, maybe this is for the discussion for later under grants, but we need to perhaps send a letter out to have them apply through that grant process? I thought we discussed that at committee of the whole. Like it's not the Radiothon. It's the 15 or 20 of them together come and outside of the grants process. So how do we fix that? But we can.
We'll look at it and we'll fix it. But we can talk about it under the grants discussion.
Perfect.
This one, Your Worship, I kind of see it a little different than a grant. Because the Radiothon itself is an event, that it's a giving event, and if they receive grants at different times, it's kind of not on that day. It kind of takes away from the momentum that they're trying to build on that day to have people reach in their pocket. So I think the fact that it happens on a day like that is important, and we can deal with it. Because it obviously is something that's important to the community and important to council. We can make a buffer or a provision within the budget. We'll just make a note of that and deal with it.
Thank you. Councillor Lesser, did you want to share something?
Yeah, I'll bring it up in the grants discussion. It was more to do with just grants and the other one.
Okay, so moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. Go ahead, Deputy.
I recommend a motion that council direct staff to investigate the managed deer hunt happening in Truro and contraceptive methods used in other jurisdictions.
Okay, moved by Councillor Cleveland, second by, didn't see a hand, sorry. Who seconded that? Oh, Councillor Cleveland. Oh, sorry, yes. Moved by the Deputy. Okay, any discussion? Oh. Dark out. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Okay, we good, Deputy? Thank you. Citizen Advisory Committees, Planning Advisory. Councillor Cleveland, that's yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. We just have one motion, and it's an interesting one because it's kind of a negative motion. The recommended motion is that the Planning Advisory Committee recommend that council deny an application to text amendments to the land use bylaw, which would enable residentially zoned lots larger than 15,000 square feet in area the ability to have a commercial van up to 20,000 pounds in gross vehicle weight.
Okay, I got a seconder there. Councillor Bell Hatfield. Okay, discussion, questions? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. Reports for information, there's nothing there. Questions for committee chairs. Does anybody have questions for committee chairs? Well, that was easy. Okay, and the addition. So we'll start with 14A, discussion regarding the grants. So we have, we've just got questions regarding the grants, I think. So Councillor Lesser, go ahead.
Well, I think we all probably experience the same thing, but it's, to me, last year and this year, going through this process as a newbie, I think it's probably the most stressful thing we do. I think all of us want to give money to all of them. And the only, the more I thought about how can we do more, and the only way to do more is to increase taxes, and nobody wants that either. And it's not an easy process to go through and try to decide who should get what. And I just, you kind of feel bad because I think there's a lot of worthy causes there that deserve money, but it's all coming out of taxpayers' money, and we're in charge of making sure we protect that. So it's a difficult process is all I wanted to say, and I think we are all probably feeling the same thing.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I just wanted to kind of feed on to what Councillor Lesser just said, and that is we only have $35,000 to give under grants, and the requested amounts that we are given is way more than that, significantly more than that. So I think just kind of that message out to the public that if we don't get everything that you've kind of asked for, it's because we just don't have the kind of funds to deal with. So we are given a set amount to deal with and to distribute as a council, and we do the best we can do. But the ask is far greater than what we have to work with.
Okay. Deputy Mayor, you had your hand up, and then Councillor Dares and CAO.
Yeah, just to kind of repeat what Councillor Hatfield and Councillor Lesser said, I feel the same. Sometimes when people do receive the grants, you get messages about, this was so low, and then you have a conversation about, there's only so much to go around, $35,000 for, however many 35, 40 organizations. And, you have to take into considerations people's ability to raise funds on their own, if they've got grants kind of in the past. If an organization's doing really good, it's easier to kind of give them less money to make sure those who don't have that kind of reach out there to make that money or to raise it on their own. So this isn't just kind of a sit down, write a number down and hope for the best. This is a lot of consideration goes into this, and we'd love to be able to support everything we can, but at the end of the day, there's only so much money, and it's not that we don't think the work that some people do is any less important than others, but organizations that can get hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's hard to cut them into 35,000 when they're doing pretty good on their own. So just a heads up, this isn't an easy decision for any of us, and if we could, we definitely give everyone the full amount, but it's here we are, and we definitely try to take everything in consideration and do our best.
Thank you, Deputy. Councillor Dares.
So I struggled with this last year, and on several fronts, actually. One being that I recall that there was a grant application for almost 3 times what our total amount of grant monies was. And so I'm wondering in those cases, and I see that there's a large application again this year, I wonder if those cases we should just be directly corresponding or communicating with them that we're probably not the funding agency that you think we are. And, because I know that that's difficult, but I think we have to manage their expectations.
So can I ask you this question first? That's a viable statement. Maybe we cover that first. But go ahead, Gil. I don't want to lose that point that you just said. It's important that people need to understand.
And I think we have to insist that, you know, in order to keep the playing field level, that any applicant would have to submit a budget. And I see that there's a better showing of that this year than there was last year, I believe. In some cases, I think we have to be cognizant too of the fact that, like last year, because of COVID, there were events that were canceled. And I think that, you know, if an event's canceled and the event cancellation is announced prior to the announcement of the grants, that we should probably take a second look at that. So in other words, if we agree to give $1,000 to an event and then the event's canceled, do we still give that $1,000? And because basically we are acting on good faith that this is going to support the event for that year. And finally, my last question is in regards to if somebody is hosting an event and raising funds to support another entity, and we're asking for budget information. Well, we get the budget information and we find out that we've given a grant and that they in turn have supplied a grant to another organization. So should we not be asking for the books for the budget information for the organization that's the recipient of the grant? So, and I'm not suggesting that we should. I'm asking the question: is that something that we should consider? In this case, and I know that it's a wonderful event, the Wedgeport Tuna Festival. But at the end of the year, we give them a grant at the end of their festival, which is, I think, a fundraiser for the museum. They granted, I think, $25,000 to the museum last year. So it's sort of like we're handing them money so they can hand it to the museum rather than us giving it to the museum. I don't know if there's a problem with that. It may not be a problem, but I just thought that we should consider it. Anyway, that's my rant.
It's no, there's
and I do have one question though. Mm-hmm. It occurs to me because I've presented to councils in the past for a number of organizations, and I know I used to hate the exercise of sitting on a Saturday doing presentations to council requesting grants. But has the amount reduced significantly over the years?
Yes,
that's budgeted. Okay, thank you.
Okay, CAO.
Thank you, Worship. So I just want to mention and I guess remind you that, and not that you need to be reminded, but maybe it's just something to think about, is that when these organizations that are all local organizations, for the most part, the very local organizations, they're providing services or events for very local people. But so same very local people that we tax, that you're turning around and handing that money to the organization. If they need more than we're able to provide from the tax dollar, right, the same people who pay the taxes are the people who are benefiting from the events or might support the events, and they could approach, run a fundraiser in the community. You're trying to figure out how much a community should support one event or another. The community can make that decision for themselves if an organization runs a fundraiser in the community, if you know what I mean. And I'll use Councillor Steve. I'll put him on the spot for, when Councillor Steve does some of the things that he does to raise funds to support some of the things that Jay Strong does. The community supports it because they value what he's doing. And some of these organizations, you feel you want to give more because you value what they're doing. But the community, you reflect the community. If they go directly to the community with a fundraiser, they should be successful. It shouldn't have to come necessarily from the tax dollar. It can come directly from the community. So I just throw that out there because I know councils past have been reluctant to support, say, charities on a national level or causes on a national level. And part of the, or one I can specifically remember was a call from the FCM to support a donation to another country because of a natural disaster. And a councillor at the time said, the individual citizens can make that decision. We don't need to make that for them. If they want to give to that cause, because it's tragic and they feel compelled, let them do that directly. That's not why we collect their tax dollars. In this case, I think, to a certain extent, providing grants is a municipal role, but so is going direct, it's also a thing for organizations to go directly to the community themselves and have those that value the services or the events or the cause reach into their pockets separately and specifically for those causes.
Perfect. Councillor or Deputy Mayor?
Just one more thing to add. Sometimes too, when we're going through these, we get people who apply both for tax relief and also for grant money. And sometimes when you look and you give someone $25,000 tax relief, it's hard to cut into the $35,000 that we're trying to spread around for, the other grants. So sometimes, you have to take in consideration that they get a big chunk of one money and they might not get under another, but at the end of the day, it's still all money coming from the town that needs to go into that. So that is something I know I take into consideration when figuring out my amounts and whatnot. And the public may not be aware of that. So just heads up, some apply for more than that. And if they don't get on the grant side, they might get it on the tax side. So you try to do what you can with the money that's given.
Thank you, Deputy. I have some thoughts. Does anybody? Go ahead, Councillor Bell.
As someone who's, been around the block, as long as I've been around the block, I can remember a time when tax exempt status was figured in a different way at the municipal level. And so I think we need to be mindful when we are looking at the grants in lieu of property taxation, that it really is a different category from the grants to organizations for activities that they are operating. And I think that there's room for debate about whether it's appropriate to fully fund the tax exempt status of, say, the Knights of Columbus Hall, or some of these other organizations who, it's room for debate. But I think it's really important to keep in mind that that the tradition has been that organizations who own property that are nonprofits and are providing services to the town, like, for instance, the Yarmouth County Museum, and, for instance, the Killam Library, which the town as a municipal unit actually has a responsibility under the Provincial Libraries Act to provide services, and we are fortunate enough in Yarmouth that we don't actually have to pay for the building because it was given to us as a gift. But I would hate to see us looking at, the Killam Library, for instance, and saying, well, we should only give them 75% of their their taxes in lieu, because after all, we're kind of shaving a little bit off of everywhere. The bottom line is I think we have some responsibilities as the municipal entity in which these organizations are operating. So I don't see the grants to organizations process as the same as the tax in lieu of process. And I think I just wanted to make that point, that I don't have a problem with I don't have a problem with that tax exempt status. For instance, the YARC is tax exempt, but it doesn't even get on the books because under the Societies Act, they were able to have a provincial, it's in provincial legislation, so it doesn't even go on the books, but they're tax exempt and 100% tax exempt. So just thoughts for consideration.
Good thoughts. Thank you. Councillor Dares?
Yeah, just a quick question. So the way we're doing it now is that each of us independently makes a suggestion of the amount to be donated, and then that's divided and averaged?
Yes.
Is that correct? So my question is, if I was to, if I represented one of the company, one of the applicants, and I abstained, which I will do, does that mean that the division is by 6 or is it still by 7?
By 6.
Okay, and how do I indicate that? Do I just put it?
Jeff, you can answer that. We usually just let Lindsay know, and she makes that division. Yeah, we've had to do that in the past because we don't want to divide it by 7. That's not fair.
Thank you.
Okay. So I just had a couple. Actually, I had a full page of things to say on this one. The grants is it's not huge, but it's really, really important. And I'll start by saying that there's nobody on that list that isn't important to the community. It's volunteers, volunteer based for the most part. They bring value to the community. I'll start by saying this because we're a relatively new council. The importance, we can't understate the importance of, or can't overstate it, of digging into those applications, of actually taking them and reading them line by line. And I think, the further we go and the more experience we get, sometimes, I'm not saying you guys, but, it just gets, it gets waylaid. And, you say, well, I already know what they did, but it's important because things change every single year. And this is serious business. When I, the year before now, as president of NSFM, and we negotiated the $70 million for businesses, for municipalities, sorry. And the next question on the table was, what about the nonprofit organizations that don't have funds? They can't fundraise the way they have in the past. It's tremendously difficult for them to get, the level of funding that they had. And it's just hard. If you don't have somebody with a wide reach, it's just really hard. So, that was put out there as, is that the next level of where we need to go with accessing huge amounts of money? It's not, I fully agree. I mean, the town needs to support these. But what Jeff said is, it really hits close to home, because it's really important that when we make our decisions, we have to base them on two things, I think. We base them on the sheet, the information that we get, trusting that it's all there. It not always isn't, is there. We need to make sure that it is, because we ask questions for specific reasons. But we base it on the facts, and then we base it, each of us, on our values. And what's important to us, and what do we believe is important to the community. So there's an equation that we use, even if we don't realize it or articulate it out loud. There is an equation that each of us uses when we go down that list. So anyway, there's some concern from me, and maybe I'm just over concerned. We have a policy. We're going to have a lot of questions, Jeff, so you might be. We have a policy on late applications. From my opinion, but we need to address this because of what happens. And I know, like, the radio stuff happens every year. There's last minute things that we don't know anything about. They come up sometimes. It used to be ball tournaments, things like that. So I just think we have the policy. I just don't know if we use it where we're supposed to use it. Do you want to answer that one? Or no? Okay, I'll keep going. Sorry, folks, but I got to get it. So we also know, and I think you all covered this extremely well, nobody gets 100% of what they ask because there's just not enough money to go around. Unless you apply late and you get on the agenda and you ask for $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000, I don't think I've ever seen us give less than what was asked when it's asked either late or outside of the grants process. So I think that's my concern, because it happens, at least half a dozen times a year, if not more. So I just think that needs to be addressed. Deputy Mayor talked about the grants and the taxes. It's a lot of money given out. And I guess and I appreciate what Councillor Bell said too, like that we need to support some of these bigger organizations. However, I will also say this, we're a very small town with, and within our region with the least ability to pay when it comes to, the levels of income and all those things for our taxpayers. That's just a fact. And so I understand, because Jeff keeps telling me time and time again, we're a town, and so we provide these services. But we continue to support organizations that are there for the entire region. In my book, that's just wrong. It doesn't it doesn't matter that they're on town land. The town only has so much land to go around. It's quickly getting used up, and I think we need to find a way to address that as well. Understanding, I know we're a town, and that's what we do, but we can't keep asking our taxpayers to keep paying for everything for the entire region. It's not landing well with me. I just jotted down that, the folks that are applying, most of them have been doing this for many years, and there's reasons we ask questions. Where else did you apply? And that goes to my last point. What is the budget? If you don't attach a budget, we don't know if you've got money in the bank and we should be giving it to you, or if we should give it to another organization. Are you a charity? Do you have insurance? All those pieces we need to protect ourselves too. We have had in the past, and Jeff, you can tell me if this was a motion of council and I'll stand corrected. We did have a councillor just step over the line and say, you know what, we're going to support this event. I don't know if that was inside or outside of council's purview. Was it inside or outside? Do we know? Or is that for later?
Sorry, I'm not clear on the situation you're referring to.
I'm talking about a councillor saying that they would support an event and pay for it. And I can't remember if that was a motion or not.
Again,
Okay. All right.
I think we better talk about that one offline, because I'm not sure what you're referring to, and it doesn't sound good.
Okay, and I think this was covered. I just jotted down a lot of stuff. But we do have, as you all said, we've got a lot of organizations with amazing mandates, and even better volunteers. We each have our own favorites, but it's our job, I guess, to make sure things are fair. So I have a lot of concerns with how the grants. I think I have a lot of concerns, and I think that part of it is to help. It's the education process. So to help the public, and when I say help the public, I mean, draw out even more applications, because there's folks out there that could use it that aren't even applying, and there's folks that are applying that may not understand completely the parameters, the numbers game, all those types of things. So anyway, and then the last thing is Councillor Dares had 4 really great questions that I think we need to address with regard to reaching out to explain the money, the budgets, making sure that the budgets are there. Like I've got the grants policy right in front of us. We won't consider a grant to an individual group or organization unless everything is filled out. We'll reduce it to any organization that has operating or accumulated surplus of funds. We won't consider late applications. We just have to figure out where we're going to land. So those 4 questions, and the grants shouldn't be used to supply more grants to another organization. I mean, I don't know. Go ahead, Councillor Dares. Said a lot, but.
Yeah, I just think, like a lot of this might sound negative, but, on a positive note, you look around this community and there's organizations such as the J Strong, the 100 Women, the 100 Guys, the Betterment Society, and they're picking up a lot of the slack. So You know,
We are.
there's a lot of good happening in this community.
And that's exactly it. There's so much good happening that we're trying to help out. We just have to figure out how do we do that, right? I mean, this community is off the charts when it comes to volunteers and organizations. We just need to make sure that we are being very fair to everybody. And I don't know that we are right now. So I don't know where we go. So do you want to address some of these questions? Like, what do you want to do? You want to put it off to committee of the whole for more discussion? Boy, we're quiet.
I think we're quiet because we really don't know. Like, they're all tough questions, and I think it goes back to the fact that we just don't have enough money to do what we want to do, and we all have a preference. I try to vote as much as I can, thinking what the majority of people would want versus what I specifically want, and I'd have to look at what the event is or the organization is and how many people use it, and but I know there's no way to do that free of bias. And I think the process we use with everybody getting to vote at least makes the process fair, that, everybody might get a little bit because of somebody that is an advocate for that one organization. But I'm just wondering if there's another piece missing as well, that, like, should we have a limit of how much people can apply for? Like, if you're applying for scholarships or whatever, there's a set amount. I don't know if we want to, I know it's organizations and charities run on different amounts of money, but I'm wondering if we should just limit the amount that you can apply for and lower the expectation of what we can do for people.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Hatfield, and then Deputy Mayor.
I just wanted to make the observation that around the council table, I see a lot of diversity, diversity of interests, diversity of age, diversity of backgrounds. And I think that one of the benefits of this process is that each of us brings that diversity to the table. And that's a leavening or a leveling out process that occurs, so that in the end, nobody gets everything they want, but by and large, I think that we do a good job for the citizens of this community with the budget that we have, and I'm perfectly comfortable, in that process. And it's about managing expectations, I guess. But then I've been on the other side of the table for many years, bringing grants proposals forward to the town, and so as a co-chair of a nonprofit organization, I have a great appreciation for what the town offers, and I know that it is an additive, that it isn't everything, that I'm going to have to work very hard as a volunteer to achieve the kinds of things that I want to achieve. And you create a budget every year, and you go out looking for various sources of money and doing fundraising, and then you tailor your budget for what your reality is. And I think every organization goes through that process. So I'm pretty comfortable with the process at hand, and I think that by and large, council does a pretty good job of representing the community.
Thank you. Deputy?
I can't say I agree. I don't think this is one of the things that I don't really enjoy the process of. It's kind of arbitrary in some sense, although we're all good people, and the integrity of this council, I would never question anyone at the table, but you could get an example of outliers if you wanted to. And if I was really in favor of maybe one organization, I could maybe give more than they even asked and give zero to another and throw off that average. I mean, once again, no one here would ever do that. And I know, but this council won't always be sitting, and it may not always agree. And I did take a look at how other how Argyle and Modi does theirs, and there are some aspects within kind of the way they do it that I do like, but maybe we could kind of just take a review of how it is we do this process to make sure it's tightened up, that, you know, the fairest and easiest way to kind of get there, because, you know, pulling numbers and whatnot and averages, it's easy sometimes to skew the numbers if you really wanted to. And I think it's important that, you know, we take everything into consideration here, and, you know, maybe look at best practices that work in other municipalities that maybe we haven't considered yet. So just kind of my 2 cents on that.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Go ahead, CAO.
Yeah, I'll just comment on that, on the deputy's last comment. So when the receipts are received at the office, there have been occasions in the past where there have been kind of outliers or you know, allocations that have made us scratch our head a little bit, and we thought, you know, maybe it was worth a conversation with the councillor, and we've done that. Either we've done that, or in fact the mayor has done that. So just to be sure that the councillor understood that the allocations, as we were reading them, were as they were intended. And I'll give you one story, and the person will remain nameless, but a long time ago, a councillor had difficulty making a decision between all the organizations, and just simply allocated the same amount to every organization, regardless of how much they asked for. So we had a discussion with the councillor and suggested, because that would be public and it was very arbitrary, that maybe he, you know, put a little more work into it, and he did. So, you know, we aren't. It's not that we won't have a conversation if we see somebody struggling with the process. And I appreciate your thoughts around, or the deputy's thoughts around seeing what the other municipalities are doing. We've done this process as far as the sheets go for a fair number of years, maybe 15 or so. And as Councillor Dares has pointed out, we used to have the in-person discussions with each applicant. We don't do that anymore. So we have changed our process in that regard, but not the sheet and how we tally that. So it may be worthwhile to have a look at that and see if we can improve it and tailor it to make it better for the councillors.
Councillor Lesser?
I know one concern that I know, Your Worship, you brought up a number of times, and I think it's on all of our minds, is that is everybody applying to all three municipalities for things that are benefiting all three municipalities? And we've talked about amalgamation or consolidation or working together more, and you know, this might be an opportunity that we could pool our money together and have one place where, and maybe that's a road we don't want to go down, but one place that people apply to, and you have voting members from all councils that decide on, that's the pool of money that we have. And you know, I think it'd be at least a fair way of getting a little bit of money from all three municipalities into events that, or organizations that we might need to. I know it'd be a completely different way of doing it, but I don't.
Different can be good.
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead, CAO. And the councillor.
I've looked at our neighboring municipalities and their grant awards, not in the last year or two, but I have looked in the past to see how much similarity there is, and there's actually quite a bit of difference in the organizations they give grant money to. And what's interesting about it is it's, you know, they have so many communities in their larger geography, right? So it's this little community hall, or it's this little communities festival, and so where we tend to have, maybe I'll say bigger, but that's not always true, bigger events or bigger asks, there are an awful lot of small things happening in small communities that those municipalities are supporting that we wouldn't think of as necessarily regional, but you know, that they are great events and great activities that are important to those communities, and those municipalities support them. So they have a different mix of applications, I would say, than what town council does. At least that was my observation.
Anyone else? Heather? Councillor Hatfield?
Yeah, I think I agree with Councillor Bell Hatfield, in that I don't have it's hard work. It's really hard work doing this, and I don't want to minimize that at all. It takes a lot of time, of our time, but that's what we're here for, and we do it. So I don't have a problem with doing it in the process. I just think that we need to follow the policies that we do have. So if we have a policy that says, 1, 2, 3, 4, then we need to follow that. Because if we're not following our policy on this, then where does that leave with other policies and processes? So I just think that we have to do what we're supposed to do. And but I don't have a major issue with it. It's hard work. It is. And you feel like, you want to give money to everybody, but we only have a certain amount of money. So I'm okay with the way it is. That's not to say we can't improve it or change it up some, but I just think we need to follow the policy that we have in place.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else? All right. Do we need a motion to review, or what do we do? Go ahead, sorry.
Your Worship, that's a lot of conversation and a lot of different angles. Why don't you sleep on it? And if you want to bring it up at the committee of the whole after you've thought about it a little bit, maybe that might be the way to approach it. If there's something you want done, give direction. But doesn't hurt. I always find it doesn't hurt to reflect on these conversations, and maybe a good idea will come out of that reflection.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Bell, were you going to?
Just make that a motion to refer this conversation back to committee of the whole.
Okay.
Or closure.
Yeah. Second by Councillor Lesser. Discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. All right. Discussion, Brent. Okay, so we're under correspondence, Fibromyalgia Awareness Day, and they are asking for staff to light up Town Hall purple on May 12th in recognition of fibromyalgia. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Lesser.
I would love to support that if it's something that staff can do. I don't think it's anything controversial or anything, and it's we know there's many people that suffer from fibromyalgia, and actually my aunt Barb Ketty wrote an entire book on fibromyalgia, so it's in our family, and I think it runs more with females than males, but at some point I might have it myself, and I think being an advocate ahead of the time is probably a good idea, and I think it just brings awareness to it, and I don't think it's that difficult to do. But if staff's able to do it, I'd like to see it done.
Okay. So moved. Did who seconded that? Deputy Mayor. Okay. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, Coal Shed Music Festival, and we have the letter here.
Your Worship, I was made aware of this letter just last week and received a copy from a councillor, and so I've placed it on the agenda. It's a request to council. I understand they've since submitted a grant application, so Your Worship, this is here for information.
Okay. Wants to start? Councillor Cleveland?
Okay, and here we go. This is a grant request. That's late. But, and this is just for me, it's my humble opinion, and you guys can take it for what it's worth. The fact that the grant wasn't applied for, I believe, is almost our fault too, or at least I take it as personal, in that I was given this letter, and I believe that Phil DeMille, the organizer of this, believed that this would count as a grant. and nobody bothered to inform him otherwise. I assumed it wasn't, but I think there was a lack of communication here and a mistake made. And I'm more than willing to say I made that mistake. I think more than one of us made that mistake, but I do believe that it was a mistake that was made.
So go ahead, Councillor Dares.
Yeah, I think, I was aware of the fact that they were making a request for funds, and quite honestly didn't connect the dots. And so I think I'd have to fall on the sword along with Councillor Cleveland.
Okay, thank you. So the mistake, I think what we should have done when we got the letters is said, make sure you apply. Okay, make sure you do the formal application, because the applications have been coming since 2007, and there's a process in place. And the coal shed has been coming to present to us for many years when we did the presentations. So I would suggest very aware of the application process. That is not just a letter. So the other question is, so I'm gonna say this because when I'm honest and I say what I think, I always get myself in trouble. And this is not negative. This is not negative. The coal shed has tremendous value. We all know that. It brings people in. Economically, it's good. It supplies money for breakfast programs. It does all those great things. There's an application process. This was late. To Councillor Heather Hatfield's point before, we somehow have to get to the point where we start to follow our own policies, understanding the discrepancy here and the mistakes and missteps. That's all taken into consideration. We got the application late, and again, the full application wasn't. Did I miss the budget? I may have missed it in an email because it's not attached, and it says you must include the comprehensive budget, most recent balance sheet, and most recent income statement. So I don't see those. Councillor Cleveland, you were gonna, I don't know if you were gonna get them.
I reached out to him. He said, well, I can give you what he replied. I'd rather, what he said basically is that we are volunteers. No one gets a wage from the event. The youth of the area, the benefactors. We've met our legal obligation by registering with joint stock companies as a charitable society. We have an annual meeting reported to joint stock, but we operate through sponsors and donations instead of admission, and it puts us in a category by ourselves. As such, no financial statement would have lasting significance, and if it were taken on by an accounting firm, it would become costly. So he was under the impression that he needed an accounting statement and said that he couldn't supply it.
Somebody, Councillor.
Yeah, I struggle with this one. I feel that this is not a new event. It's a valuable event to the community, and I can't speak highly enough as how valuable this is to our community. But it's not a new event. This has been going on for many years, and I feel that the organizers at this point should know the process of how to apply for the grant. When I look at the other grant applications, there are some very new applicants that have come forward that we've never heard from before. They followed the process. This one hasn't. And so I just think that we have a policy. I think this organization should have known what to do, and they haven't done it. And we've had to in fact, reach out to them and ask to get this information, And I don't feel that that's fair to the other applicants that we're doing this for this applicant or non-applicant.
Councillor Bell?
Thank you. Yeah, when I consider this, I'm always weighing the value to the community, the value to our residents and to our visitors who take great enjoyment out of the entertainment that is offered, and to the emerging and emerging artists who are given an opportunity to be on a stage, sometimes for the first time. And I see that as an opportunity to develop talent. And I have to weigh that against the difficulty that we seem to have in getting the organizers to comply with what are relatively reasonable expectations for us as a municipal council, who has to, we have a fiduciary responsibility to our taxpayers to spend money wisely. And that means that we require information in order to evaluate and assess these applications and grants. And I did go on the Registry of Joint Stocks site to look at the the coal shed registry, and I know that they do have an annual statement that's on file. So they must have sent something to the Registry of Joint Stocks in order to comply with their requirements. And I am having a really difficult time understanding why that can't be presented to council, because we have to adjudicate on the basis of what are not just what's a good thing, but also what is their capacity to have other sources of income that would help to fund these events that they're coming to us for help with. I see the grant process that the town enjoys as a seeding program and an opportunity to seed events so that maybe they can become self-sustaining on their own or with other sources of funding. So I'm really torn about this. I'm really torn because I know it has value to the community and I want it to succeed. So I would like to put a motion on the table, and we can just vote on it up or down, but this is my motion. Whereas the Coal Shed Festival is an established organization in the town of Yarmouth whose outdoor music festival entertains residents and visitors and provides a venue for emerging and established musical artists and makes significant contributions to the Yarmouth the school breakfast programs. And whereas the Coal Shed Festival sent notice to councillors of its intention to host a festival in 2022, and whereas Yarmouth Town Council has not yet met to allocate the $35,000 it has available in 2022-2023 for grants to organizations, that the council accept for consideration a completed application from the Coal Shed Festival that is received by 5 p.m. on Monday, February the 4th. And that is my motion. And I do mean completed.
I would second that if I could. Okay, Councillor Cleveland will second that. So I'm looking at hands. Councillor Lesser and then Councillor Dares.
I think actually Councillor Dares might have been before me. I believe is that.
Either way, whoever I see first in this one, because I don't have my buttons and I don't know how to work.
Well, I'll take my turn, I guess. I think the event is a good event. I see the benefit on the other side and the amount of children it feeds. I see it's not an event I actually go to. I'm going to be honest. I pop down, but I don't spend full days there. And that's just because I find it difficult being in the education field to spend too much time in the downtown core without getting bombarded with education questions. So, but I do go, and what I see is a demographic of people who, in a lot of cases, would go because they don't pay for it. It's a free event, and I know we're all thinking you could charge to get into the event, and not maybe give the money away, all those things. But I think a lot of people that go there go because it's a free event on the waterfront, and I think it's an incredible thing for Yarmouth to have. I'm going to go out and say that if we don't support it, and as council, I think there's a number of people that we could, as the mayor said, we can do a fundraiser and we can raise that money, within a few days, I'm sure. And I think I would like to take that on, providing, I don't know what we decide as a group, what we're going to do with it, but regardless, I'd like to see the money in place that it can go on, especially with the cat returning this year. So that's kind of, I guess, my intent. It's not to do with council, but I think there's a number of people that would be willing to step up and help raise the money if needed.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dares, and then Deputy.
Thank you. So throughout my entire career, I've had to deal with policy, and I know that many times there's got to be an exception to policies. There's always something that's an exception, and I want to bring, Councillor Lesser makes a good point about the demographic. I remember being approached by the CAO at the Mariner Center, asking about a particular event that the Mariner Center wasn't going to realize much of a profit on. However, it was one of those events that probably would only draw about 150 people. So the organizers couldn't really afford to pay a high rent because they weren't going to have a high gate. So they were contemplating saying, no, we can't do this. However, what you have to consider is that's a community center, and that the demographic that attended that event in particular, it's probably the only time in the course of the year that they would bother to go to the Mariner Center. So you are playing to an audience that would otherwise maybe never enjoy anything at the Mariner Center. And so in this case, you're right. I've been down at the Coal Shed Festival, and there is a demographic that probably enjoys free entertainment, and they're there faithfully all 3 weekends. There's also the issue of the fact that this event supports the breakfast program, and so I'm really concerned about if they can't raise the money to host the event, that the thousands of dollars that goes to the school breakfast program is not going to be there, and many kids are going to be going home or coming to school and staying hungry. And I'm really concerned about that, because that has an impact far beyond the monetary value. This has been going on for years, and you're correct in that. It's a small group that organizes it, and there's a lot on their plate. And in this case, I think, quite honestly, although I love policies because it's a good guide, but I think sometimes you have to consider the extenuating circumstances and maybe make an exception to policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Deputy. You're muted.
I agree with what Councillor Dare said, and respectfully what everyone else has kind of had to offer too. It's that, you try to balance the policy part with, as Councillor Dare said, and, others about how important the event is to our community and whatnot. And I agree with Councillor Lesser, actually. I just kind of sent him a message, and I'm on board for whatever we can't do here, kind of within council and whatnot, that we get together and make sure that this event gets what it needs. And I see what it does for the schools. That breakfast table in the morning stands there, well, sometimes till 10:30, 11 o'clock with snacks throughout the day. And if those kids didn't get them, they wouldn't be there. And I know we can make donations ourselves directly, but to provide an event, where people feel like they're a part of things too and whatnot. I have no problem kind of stepping up and making sure we make sure this goes down. So either way, it'll get done.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy. I don't think anybody's saying we don't support it. There's none of that. Everybody supports it, I believe. Everybody knows how important it is to the area. But Jeff, I need you to help me on this one. Like the promise back in 2007, which is what I was talking about earlier, there was a promise that we would take care of the sound at $3,000. Like now it's 10.
So Your Worship, the initial promise was actually not even the town directly. It was the Waterfront Development Corporation. They had developed the coal shed as a venue, and Mr. DeMille and his helpers had conceived of this event and worked out a deal with the executive director of the Waterfront Corporation to help support getting the event off the ground, and that's where it was for a couple, maybe a few years. And the Waterfront Development Corporation, in doing so, was really stepping outside of their mandate. At the time, their mandate was to develop infrastructure, turn it over to the town. Operations were the town, and still are the town. And so that arrangement sort of got transferred to the town. Now, once that occurred, we instead of dealing with it as a partnership, which the Waterfront Development Corporation had done, we dealt with it as a grant request. Just like the curling event asked for a grant earlier, just like the number of grants that you've been wrestling with. And I'll say that the organizers of the coal shed have always wanted to maintain that partnership where the town would just pay for the sound system for 1, 2, or 3 weekends now, rather than deal with it as a grant. That's the way it started, and from their point of view, I can respect that. But the town has said repeatedly, we're not going to pay Ocean Blue directly. We need to pay your association. It is a grant request. Please apply. And so there's been this sort of I would say disconnect, but a difference, I guess, between how the organizer would like to deal with the town and this request, and how the town is trying to make it like the other requests that we receive. And so I think that the history is part of the reason that we have this sort of difference of how we want to deal with this with the organizer. It's a great event. It's a fantastic event. It's 3 weekends. It's summer. I can't imagine this summer, if we get past COVID and people are out and enjoying, it won't be just a few people. I think Derek will be down there for the day because he'll be so happy to be able to be outside and enjoying our great weather and the music and the community. So I think, it's what we need coming out of COVID, and I hope we're coming out of COVID. That isn't the issue. And as you've said, Your Worship, we're not saying we're not sure if it's worth it. What they do with their surplus is commendable and important to the community. It's about they've tried to have a partnership in a way that the town is trying to have it in a different way. And so I just want to be clear that this isn't an organization doing something wrong. It's an organization trying to continue to do something the way they did it in the outset. And the town isn't trying to do something wrong. We're trying to do something so that we're dealing with, you're wrestling with important decisions about supporting these organizations, and you'd like to have a level playing field in a certain way to be able to deal with this. And so neither side is wrong in this. It's just you have to kind of navigate your way to a solution that we do have the event, that the community enjoys it, and that you feel that your process has worked.
Well said. Go ahead. Who's first? Councillor Lesser and then Councillor Dares? Councillor Dares and then Councillor Lesser.
I'm just thinking here, the request is for the sound system. At one point, I know we had Play Yarmouth, and it had its sound system. Like, maybe Councillor Cleveland has a better idea on this, but would it be worth looking at, and not for council to do it, but if a group of people wanted to volunteer, buying a sound system that can be used for these events, whether it's on the waterfront or if it's something in Alma Square or whatever we choose to do. If we want to put on nice events, is there a possibility we could look at fundraising or and even requesting other municipalities to chip in and get a sound system that would save that money from every year? And I don't know if that's doable or not. I have no idea what it would cost to get a sound system of the type that they use. So
the Sharks, I think the Shark Scramble got they needed like microphones, like whatever you call them, portable microphones and stuff. And they said, like, we know we're going to need them every year, so we're going to invest in them. And Wade, maybe you can answer this because I know you're at the coal shed, but is there a donation jar there? Is there a donation jar at every time somebody comes up on the stage?
May I? That's not exactly how it works. There are donation jars there. Yes. Most of the donations, that's how the food, the breakfast clubs and stuff are taken care of. Remember, it's a free event. And so the donation jars are more for the food events as opposed to that. There are donation jars there, and it helps support because everybody who plays gets a stipend. And I do mean a stipend, trust me. They're not making a fortune. But there are stipends there for the people who do perform. The rest of it's all done volunteer. The way that they look at it is that they hope that we, being the town, supplies the sound system, and with that, the people who take care of the sound. So you have people who are doing it. Sound systems are fairly expensive. If you were talking about having a sound system, like a town sound system that we could raise funds for, I suppose that's an interesting idea. But in a way, it's probably easier to rent because the equipment is all in good shape all the time. It comes with someone who will set it up, will use it properly, because just having, for somebody like the Shark Scramble, all you need is a PA system. You talk, and that's it. With music, it's more complicated than that, obviously, and fairly expensive. Things are very modern now, so a lot of it is computerized. So there's a little bit to that. So it would be quite an investment. So in all honesty, you're better off renting. That's in my humble opinion, and that's just my opinion.
Well, that's good. You know the business. I guess for me, part of the struggle is that it started at $3,000. And now it's up to 10, and there was no.
To be fair, it started at $3,000 and it was a weekend. Now
yes.
Now it's 3. Now it's 3 weekends. It's 9 days, and so
that's
what you're paying for is extended rentals. So
yeah. Yes, and I think we understand that, but when you commit to $3,000,
yeah, it's quite a difference.
That's your expectation. Right now, their expectation goes up, but ours didn't. Right. So, okay. Sorry, Councillor Dares. Thanks for that, Councillor Wade.
Yeah, I think that commitment it's 15 years old, so it's time maybe to update. But just to add to what Councillor Cleveland has said, this isn't just for the rental of the equipment. It also comes with somebody sitting there all 3 weekends operating the equipment, and I don't think there's anybody that I'm aware of that has that kind of expertise just sitting on a shelf. So, having hosted a number of events at the Mariner Center that required sound systems, whether they were in-house or from outside, I can tell you that, we considered the purchase of a sound system at the Mariner Center at one time. The consideration lasted about 30 seconds. And it became very obvious that the only way to do this was to rent the equipment and to have the person with the knowledge and expertise come with that equipment. So,
Larry's he knows what he's doing. He really does. He's an asset. There's no doubt about it. I think I'm still back to the whole process. But to Councillor Bell's motion, the motion would be that we put it on our list for grant applications only if by the end of day on Monday, we get that full application. Councillor Dares, is your hand still up, or you?
Yeah, I'm sorry, one more point that I wanted to raise was just that when this goes into the grant applications, it looks like that would be approximately more than 25% of the total grant monies that we've allocated.
Okay, so the question, yeah, so the question there is either we up the amount of money that we're going to give, or is it going into the grant process as it was intended to do, as we've suggested for a lot of years, and it's going to come out at not 100% of the ask. Is that going to be okay? Because in the past it hasn't been okay. And then to Councillor Lesser's point, you know, there's people that will help raise the rest of that. Go ahead, Councillor Cleveland.
I believe it should go into the grant process as it was before. That's my opinion. And I know that I know of our organizations, and I can while you were talking, I can take care of the rest with local organizations who would be willing to help support this. But I believe it needs to go through the grant process.
Okay, with the understanding that it's not the $10,000. It's the process, right? It's following the policy and making it fair for everybody else, because I guess I sit here and I think Knights of Columbus, Lions Club, Hope Center, there's such amazing, and they, anyway, the process is followed. So, okay, so go ahead, Councillor Heather.
Yeah, I would just want to comment on that. I would certainly agree with what Councillor Cleveland has said. I think that, again, I can't underestimate the value of those 3 weekends on the waterfront. I mean, we do need it, but for me, it is that process. So I think this is a step in the right direction. And I'm sure the community will come together to help them with whatever else is needed. But we do need to see it happen. We just need to get our heads clear about how we're doing it. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else before we vote on the motion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Phew, thank you. CAO?
Your Worship, I want to mention something that we haven't talked about, and this one is my bad. So council sets the amount that we give away for grants, right? So you know, you've been given a task with $35,000 to work with, and you've assumed that is. You know, I think that's fair to say that you've assumed that is what you have, and that is not up for discussion. But the question was asked earlier. This amount has reduced significantly from pre-COVID years. You'll recall that I think we had in the area of $70,000 or $80,000 that we were giving away. You were granting to organizations. Through the COVID years, 2 things happened. Things got pretty tight financially, and the events, some of the large events that were asking for money, weren't holding their events. And so there was a reduced need to have as much money in the pot. The pot was reduced to $35,000. You, as council, set that amount, but you have a requirement under the Act that you need to set that amount for the 22-23 grants. You would have to set that before April 1st. So you do have time between now and April 1st as you're contemplating this. And I say, I know this is throwing a wrinkle or a wrench in the works here, but you do, and I'll have to answer to the Director of Finance for this comment, but you do have the ability to consider changing the amount that's available in the pot.
That will cover this batch?
That will cover this batch. This is the 22-23 grants that you're considering. Now, okay. Consider, you know, that we've already tonight $10,000 for a curling event. You know, you want to help another expensive event that you're talking about right now, and there is a whole list of organizations who've applied. But I feel it's my, I know it's throwing a wrench in it, but it's my responsibility to remind you that the amount that you give away through the grants process, is your decision. It hasn't been predetermined by anybody else. So I just wanted to be sure that you understood you have some flexibility there.
Well, I like that flexibility. That feels good.
All due respect, but could you have told us that first?
Well, you see, and so this is where it's my bad, Your Worship, is that in the past, I think when we've done this process, I have made that point clear earlier, and here we are, and that amount hasn't changed significantly. It did in the COVID years. It came way down, and it didn't occur to me until you're into this discussion tonight. But it was, I wanted you to talk about the thing you were talking about, but I know you have a lot of other decisions that you're trying to look at a very small pot, and you're right. It should have come earlier in the process, perhaps even before the applications were received, that you understood what you were dealing with and what authority, or not authority, but what lever you had there to set the pot. So it's not too late. Is why I bring it up now, is that I know you've given those applications a lot of thought and time already. But think about that you do still have the opportunity to change the size of the pot, given that we think circumstances are changing and some of those needs that kind of went away during COVID may be back.
Good. Thanks for that.
Okay. I'm sorry, Jerry.
Okay, so did we vote on that? We did. Okay. Phew. See, Deputy Mayor, we need you back for the 20-minute meetings. Okay, Colshed, approval of invoices, that the various invoices be approved for payment. Can I have a motion? Okay, Councillor Cleveland, second by Councillor Bell. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Date of next meeting is March the 10th. That's not March break, is it, Jeff? No, we're good then. And in camera, so a motion to go in camera. Oh, hang on 1 second. Before we go in camera, look what I have. February 26th, the coldest night of the year. So I think you can contact Shift House or the Women's Center and donate. Lots of great things happening. So I can take that hat off. Go ahead, CAO.
You have some you have some additions there.
We have additions. Right. So that was just one addition that I covered. Okay, so I just put a couple on just for information, the garden party. And Lindsay texted me and said, you didn't put that on there, and I didn't, but it's a letter from Government House from His Honor, the Lieutenant Governor, requesting that we partner, that actually the Mayor's office and his office partner to do the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Garden Party. I think, honestly, I have to say, what an honor and a privilege just to be asked to do that. But they had so much fun, and it was such a wonderful event the last time we did the garden party for their honors, that they reached out and asked that we would do this with them. July 16th is the date. I was going to reach out to Daryl and see if that's, I don't know if that's CFest time, but Jeff, that can come out of the entertainment budget or the mayor's fund or whatever. Is that where it would come from?
Yes, Your Worship, we'll take that out of the mayor's fund.
That is during CFest, Mayor Mood, so that will be awesome.
Even better. Okay.
Little sandwiches.
Right, little Sammy's. I know Steve will be there with his suit. So I don't know if you want to make a motion that we do this, or how we want to do that. I mean, it's they've said the mayor's office to Government House, but what do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, go ahead and make a motion. Then it's on the books and it's there for all of time.
Okay. Councillor Dares, you're making that motion. Second by Councillor Val Hatfield. I see your hand too there, Derek. Okay, any discussion on that one? Hey, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. I will, once I get to the office, I'll get Lindsay to send that out to everybody. And then the other one was a letter of support for the Southwest Biosphere. Just hang on one second. Okay, so in a nutshell, it was David Solos that contacted me today to just ask for letter support from the town of Yarmouth. They are going to apply, the Southwest Biosphere is going to apply for grants for the, Jeff, I know you're going to know what this is, the Billion Tree Fund. And there's no financial ask or anything. They just think that a letter from the town would go a long way, and the whole carbon footprint and all those things are amazingly positive. And I did mention to him, Jeff, that maybe Brandon was probably going to apply to the same thing. I thought I sent him something with regard to the trees. Anyway, yeah. If he does, it would come out of, I want to say it'll come out of the other fund. There's two streams, and one stream is this one, the Southwest Biosphere, and our stream would be for urban centers. So it wouldn't conflict in any way, not that it would anyway. So I'm just looking for a motion for a letter of support to do that letter. Okay. Councillor Lesser, second by Councillor Heather. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. I think that was it for additions. Two simple ones. Let's see here. Okay, motion to go in camera, please. Councillor Lesser, seconded by Councillor Heather. All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carried.